So I'm French, and Nathan is not good at French, and I'm not perfect in English. So if I'm not clear, please just let me know. And I'm trying to speak loud, but if I forget, just let me know. I'm going to talk about...
Armony, no, I don't think that was intended for you. Please continue on.
AccessiWeb Methodology. It's an operational methodology to check conformance to WCAG 2. And it's something we are doing in France, but we also have an English version. And I want to give you the point of view of the French experience and European one, because I know in other countries sometimes you just have to implement WCAG directly. And why did we create Accessi Web? That's the question. So the situation in Europe, just to give you a panorama, we have a recommendation to conform to WCAG 2 level AA for public websites. It's not new, and the problem is nobody really implements this recommendation, and some do it partially, and in France it's really bad. There is monitoring web accessibility in Europe. It's a study, 2011, and the results are really bad. And compared to the rest of the world, in Europe the level is really low, but in France it's worse. A recent study by a Brainnet non-profit on the tenant of public websites in France in 2014 said only 3% of the public websites published the declaration of conformance as required by the law, and the level is really, really bad. So we have recommendations, we have WCAG, and why accessibility is not taken into account, not by everybody, but larger. Why in France it's so low? The problems are a lack of promotion in France. So it's we had a law, but nothing to really promote web accessibility by the government. Until this year, it's beginning to change, but it's pretty new. And except of this first fact, the problem of WCAG when you're French, maybe more generally, I would be interested to know your opinion and your experience. But more generally, there are too much things to read, and most are in English, and it's not enough operational. When you click, when you read a success criterion, then you have to meet how to read how to meet WCAG, and then you have a list of techniques, and you have to choose. That it's pretty hard. If you're not an expert, it will be practically impossible to implement. And if the problem is accessibility had to be implemented by everyone, and front-end developers, but everyone, and they don't have time to do it. So Accessi Web is a project by non-profit organization, Brainnet, and it's a collaborative effort with both programs. So you can find an English version, but it's not the last one. I gave you the link, and you have the last version in French, and you're free to fork it if you want, because it's under a free license, so it's really, the goal is to share. The first goal of accessibility methodology is to ensure an operational understanding of WCAG 2. I don't know if I can show you on the web. Maybe you can go, if I can, you can go on the browser to the English one on the link on the slide 7. And you will see Accessi Web is organized into 13 thematics. So you have images, frames, colors, multimedia, tables, links, scripts, mandatory elements, structuration of the information, presentation of information, forms, navigation, consultation. Why those thematics? Just to be operational. If you have a question, how do I create an image? You just have to click on the thematic, and then you will see WCAG principle, receivable, the guidelines, the general guidelines of the thematic, and then criterion and text, and the section with the conformance, the mapping with WCAG 2. The reference list has 3 levels: the thematic, the criterion, and the test. So the tests are used to be completed, pass the criterion. But it's only the criterion that is required. And the strength of this methodology is just one question, one answer. You just have to say if it's bad, fair, or not applicable, so it's more favorable. The second goal of Accessi Web methodology is not to replace WCAG 2, but to allow the to check the conformance to WCAG 2. So we made great work to ensure the conformance with the principles, success criteria, and techniques. And as you can see in the reference list, if you're on the web, you can see you always have this section mapping with WCAG 2, and you have the references. For example, criterion 1.1, you have success criterion in WCAG 2, 1.1.1, and all the techniques and failures mapping. It's not just a reference list, it's methodology used in a certification process. In France, the law requires to publish conformance claim to WCAG, not to WCAG. It's another name, that's the same thing. And the problem is the clients don't really know how to do, and if they just use WCAG, okay, I'm seeing in the chat, the sound is really bad, you know. Can I do something? Okay. So the Accessi Web methodology allows you to publish a conformance claim. With this methodology, you just have to have agreed with all the criteria and to say if it's pass, failed, or not applicable. And you will have the answer at a level of conformity, not of accessibility. It's different, of course, but the level of conformance. And the other goal is to highlight the good work. So there is a label, but certification by this Renaissance non-profit. But there will be state label too, certification, to highlight the good work. So it's another tool to promote WCAG and accessibility. So the main question of this kind of tool is relying upon a technology. So there are choices, and the problem everybody knows is the problem of WCAG 1. It was too precise and just relying upon technologies that didn't anticipate how it will evolve. And the question of JavaScript, use of pixel, HTML5 support. So the decision of WCAG 2 was to be technology, not rely upon a technology, and just general criteria. The problem is it's too general, and if you, so it's a strength because it won't be, how do you say, it won't be, it will stay forever because it doesn't rely on technology, so it will always be true. But you don't know how to use it really, and you have a lot of techniques, and you don't know which one you use. Or so all the different references, because Accessi Web is one of them, but it's not the only one. You have in different, what happens? You have different states, the same methodology. The main problem is to make it evolve with the technology. And if it's not really practical and possible when you are in W3C and in a big international consortium, and maybe you have years of discussions before agree. It's easier when you are in state level. So this is why Accessi Web Methodology has been implemented and created. And now there is a new contract in France, government contract, to implement Accessi Web Methodology for the state. And I think it could be a good thing to share, because I'm sure everybody who, all the people who use WCAG also have their own references. And maybe it could be a good project to share how we do and to make a collaborative work to improve those different references. So it's all a question of compromise, and we're going to have a big public debate about how do we want to make this compromise. So do we use HTML5, and or do we always how do we treat JavaScript? In the first version of the actual version, the current version of the RGAA, the French references for accessibility, for administration. It was decided to forbid use of JavaScript, or to treat it, you had to make an alternative version. So it's not realistic today, nowadays. And it's pretty bad for accessibility in Asia, I think, because it's like you forbid everything. And I'm not sure it's relevant to test in links today, even if there are people, and I know some people who use text browsers. And this public debate will be to decide how do you consider accessibility, and what would be the best compromise between embrace all the users, which in my opinion it's not possible in a way, and allow developers and clients to use new technologies and in a way that is accessible for the most people. So we have to have this debate, because in WCAG it's easier, because the condition is to say you have to be compatible with technology, with assistive technology and with accessibility. But you don't have rules if you have to use this kind of technology or not. And when you have to make choice with those kind of references, you will tell, okay, in the previous version, it was in 2009, because in France you have a lot of intranet that forbids the use of JavaScript. They force people not to use only JavaScript and to display a version without JavaScript. Now today, if we make the overchoice, what are the consequences? And the developers are waiting for this kind of clear recommendation, not only just make sense, because they won't make sense. So now I hope I've been too quick, so I'm sorry. But I hope I would like this session to be an exchange to know how you did it, what is your experience, and if the people want to react. Do you use this kind of references? I know not all the countries use it.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said, Armony?
What?
What was the last thing you said? I couldn't hear you properly.
Oh, okay. I said, do you use for the participants this kind of references? How do you implement? The question is, we have a lot great difficulties in France to make the WCAG implemented. So how do you do in your country? In your project?
Yeah, I think the the situation that you're having in France is similar to in a lot of other countries, that people try to kind of adapt to the WCAG 2 AAA standard, and there's still a lot of I guess lack of understanding in how to exactly do that. I had a question too for you, unless there's any other questions in the chat at the moment. When you think about assistive technology, what's the situation in France? Like, what are the most commonly used screen reader or screen magnifier, for example? And my second question was, how do you define compliance with WCAG? Like, do you want something to actually work with specific assistive technology, or do you just want the code to work, even though the most popular screen reader in France doesn't work with it, for example?
We implement the techniques. So this work of compliance, if it's a sufficient technique, has been done anyway. And then we also test some techniques with a reference. It's the question of this debate we're going to use. What are the technologies we want to make the test on? So we have a suggestion, but it's a debate in progress. So the suggestion we do is to test on different couples, browser and operating systems.
Mm-hmm.
And the last versions of free and open source browsers, and 2 versions before for Internet Explorer or Internet Explorer actually. So and yes, Safari.
So, what assistive technology would you target in combination with those browsers?
You have NVDA, JAWS, Untitled, and
Okay. The other question that I had was, you mentioned HTML5 and kind of modern technologies. Like, what's your view on whether those things should be considered compliant or not? For example, HTML5 has some features that could be beneficial for accessibility, but are not fully supported yet by all browsers and all assistive technology, for example. What's your opinion about, whether we should move forward and actually embrace those new standards, or whether we should just wait until those standards are more broadly supported by the technology?
Once again, it's a question of compromise, but I think we have to go forward, but we have to make tests anyway. With this base of this reference, we make tests on different browsers and assistive technology. And if it works on this base, we implement it and make a recommendation. So it's reference with new recent browsers, but we have to make retro compatibility with the previous or the 2 version before.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm clear.
All right. Are there any other questions from the participants? And if not, I guess we can end the session early. We got about halfway, so unless there was something else you wanted to discuss, Armony?
No, I was curious, but that's the first time I participate in this kind of meeting on the web. Usually I make discussion with the room, so it's less easy on the web, but I would be curious to know if somebody wants to share their experience with these debates we have now in France, if it's a good thing or not to have these debates. And yes, it's something we're just doing now. So.
Okay, you were breaking up a little bit for me for the question that you just asked.
Okay.
Are there any other questions in the chat?
No.
All right, I guess we'll just end the session for now, and in half an hour we'll be back for Marco's Day. So thank you very much, Armony, for presenting. Yeah, and if anybody has questions for her afterwards, then just let us know.
Thank you.
All right, take care, Armony.
Bye.
Bye.